She stepped carefully onto the polished wooden floor of the boutique, her heart fluttering with a mixture of excitement and nerves. It was not often that she visited such fancy places. Her life was simple, filled with everyday routines, quiet mornings, and modest pleasures, but today she wanted to treat herself. The window displays had caught her attention earlier, and she could not resist stepping inside to look closer. The soft lighting, the neatly arranged dresses, and the subtle scent of expensive perfume made her feel as if she had entered another world. She walked slowly, her eyes scanning the racks, pausing here and there to admire fabrics and colors that were far more extravagant than anything she usually wore. Her hands lightly brushed against a delicate dress, feeling the smooth material between her fingers. It was beautiful, understated yet elegant, with a gentle shimmer that seemed to dance under the boutique lights. She held it against herself, imagining how it might look if she could ever wear something so luxurious. She tried to ignore the whisper of doubt creeping into her mind. People like her did not usually belong in places like this. She was careful, polite, and tried not to draw attention to herself. But there was always that nagging thought that maybe her presence was unwelcome. A sales assistant approached her, clipboard in hand, offering a rehearsed smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Can I help you find something?" the assistant asked, her tone polite but slightly formal, as if measuring whether the visitor fit the boutique's usual clientele. She nodded politely, explaining she was just browsing, looking at a few dresses that caught her eye. The assistant's smile tightened, and for a moment, she felt the subtle judgment in the air, a silent assessment of who she was and whether she belonged. She moved to another rack, selecting a dress that seemed simple enough to pass unnoticed, yet beautiful enough to make her feel special. She held it up, studying the lines, imagining herself wearing it at some quiet gathering, perhaps a small dinner or a casual event. The fabric was soft, the color gentle, not too bold or flashy. She felt a spark of hope, a tiny excitement that maybe today she could allow herself this small luxury. Just for a moment, but before she could move to the fitting room, the assistant returned, her expression now slightly tense. "I'm sorry, but I think it's best if you leave," she said, her voice polite but firm. The words felt like a punch, sudden and unexpected. She blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The assistant repeated herself, adding that the store had a policy about certain clients, though her explanation was vague and left unspoken the real reason. The woman simply did not look like someone who belonged there. Shock and confusion froze her in place. She could not understand how a simple visit, a quiet moment of looking at dresses, could end in rejection. She felt her cheeks heat up, a burning mix of embarrassment and disbelief. Other shoppers glanced over briefly, curious, but quickly returned to their own world, leaving her feeling exposed. She wanted to argue, to explain that she meant no harm, that she only wanted to look, not to steal, not to intrude. But the words caught in her throat. She had always been a careful person, never one to raise her voice or challenge authority unless absolutely necessary, and now, standing in the middle of a boutique that suddenly felt cold and judgmental, she felt small and powerless. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the dress back on the rack, careful not to wrinkle it. She avoided looking at the assistant, not wanting to invite more judgment. Slowly, she turned toward the exit, her footsteps quiet against the polished floor. Each step felt heavier than the last, the air seeming thicker, as if the boutique itself was pressing down on her. She could hear the faint murmur of other shoppers, the soft rustle of clothes being handled, and it all felt like a reminder that she did not belong in this world of luxury, that she was an intruder in a place designed for people who were confident, polished, and effortlessly elegant. Once outside, she leaned against the cool stone wall of the building, taking a moment to collect herself. The sunlight felt harsher than usual, reflecting off the windows and casting long shadows across the sidewalk. She closed her eyes and took a few slow breaths, trying to push away the sting of humiliation. It was not the first time she had felt out of place in a world that valued appearances over character, but it was one of the sharper experiences she had encountered. She reminded herself that her worth was not measured by the judgment of strangers, that being simple, modest, and kind mattered more than fitting into a mold created by others. Despite the embarrassment, she could not suppress a quiet spark of defiance. She had not done anything wrong. She had only wanted to enjoy a small moment, to see beauty without fear or reservation, and she would remember this feeling, not as shame but as a reminder that sometimes the world could be cruel, but her spirit could remain intact. She straightened her shoulders, lifting her chin slightly, and allowed herself a small, ironic smile. She knew she would continue to enjoy her simple pleasures, even if the world sometimes judged her for them. She walked slowly down the street, her mind turning over the incident. She wondered what kind of life led people to judge so quickly, to assume so much based on appearances alone. Her own life was quiet but full, rich with love, friendships, small joys, and personal victories that no one else could measure. And yet in moments like these, the contrast between her inner world and the outer world felt painfully sharp. She clenched her fists gently, not in anger but in determination. She would not let this small humiliation define her. It was an experience, nothing more, a brief encounter in a life that had far more depth and meaning than any boutique could comprehend. As she continued walking, she noticed the small details around her. The laughter of children playing nearby, the scent of fresh bread from a bakery, the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. These simple things reminded her of the richness in her everyday life, the quiet beauty that she often overlooked in her pursuit of normalcy. She realized that while the boutique had rejected her, life itself offered countless moments of genuine value and joy. She allowed herself to smile more fully now, feeling a sense of resilience growing within her. By the time she reached a small park bench nearby, she felt a mixture of relief and lingering frustration. She sat down, watching people pass, each absorbed in their own worlds. She reflected on how easily people could be judged and how often appearances led to misconceptions. Her mind wandered through memories of her own life, the challenges she had faced, the obstacles she had overcome quietly, without fanfare. These thoughts brought a quiet pride, a recognition that her worth was not something others could diminish with a few harsh words or dismissive glances. As she sat there, collecting her thoughts, she felt a subtle shift inside her. The initial shock and embarrassment were fading, replaced by a sense of clarity. She understood that her life, simple as it might appear to outsiders, was rich and meaningful in ways that mattered far more than luxury clothes or designer labels. She allowed herself a few moments of peaceful reflection, appreciating the ordinary, beautiful aspects of her life that were often overlooked by those who valued only surface appearances. The sun began to tilt lower in the sky, casting warm golden light across the pavement. She stayed seated a while longer, enjoying the calm and the gentle reminder that dignity and self-respect were hers to keep, no matter what anyone else thought. In the quiet of that moment, she felt a small but significant triumph, a reclaiming of her own confidence, a quiet assertion that she belonged in the world just as she was. Finally, she stood smoothing her simple dress and began to walk home. Each step felt lighter now, carrying with it a renewed sense of self, a resolve not to be defined by others' judgments. The boutique incident would fade into memory, but the lessons it brought would stay with her: the importance of inner strength, the value of simplicity, and the enduring power of self-respect. She knew that life had far greater adventures and joys waiting for her, and she was ready to meet them, one small, meaningful step at a time. She found herself sitting on a quiet park bench, the city sounds fading into the background as she tried to make sense of what had just happened. The boutique incident replayed in her mind like a scene from a play she had not auditioned for. She could still see the tight smile of the sales assistant, hear the polite yet cold words that told her she did not belong. The embarrassment lingered, a persistent ache that made her chest tighten. She pressed her palms to her knees, trying to ground herself, to remember that one moment could not define her. As she looked around, she noticed families strolling by, couples holding hands, and children chasing after a ball. The world went on as usual, indifferent to her private humiliation. She found herself thinking about the strange contrast between her own simple life and the sparkling world inside the boutique. She had always lived quietly, content with ordinary routines, simple meals, and the little joys that many people overlooked. Her life had a rhythm and peace that luxury often lacked. Yet in moments like this, the gap between her world and the world of polished appearances felt sharp and painful. She took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp air, and tried to remind herself of the values she held dear. Her worth was not determined by labels, expensive fabrics, or social approval. She had been raised to respect herself, to treat others kindly, and to find happiness in things that mattered: genuine connections, laughter shared with friends, and the comfort of knowing she was enough just as she was. These thoughts offered her some comfort, but the sting of public embarrassment was stubborn, refusing to fade entirely. She found her mind wandering to memories of moments when people had underestimated her, laughed at her simplicity, or treated her as if she were invisible. Each memory carried a small wound, but also a hidden strength she had built over the years. She remembered how she had faced difficulties alone, how she had solved problems with patience and care, and how she had always found a way to persevere without losing her sense of self. In that quiet reflection, she realized that every slight, every judgment had shaped her resilience. Her eyes wandered to a small fountain in the distance, the water sparkling in the late afternoon sun. She watched the droplets dance, each one catching the light, each one momentary yet perfect. She thought about the way life flowed around her, unpredictable and sometimes harsh, yet filled with unexpected beauty. Maybe, she reflected, the boutique incident was just another ripple in the stream, a brief disturbance in an otherwise calm life. She let herself smile faintly, imagining the water washing away the sting of judgment and leaving clarity in its place. Time passed slowly, measured not by the ticking of a clock but by the movement of people and shadows around her. She noticed an elderly man feeding pigeons nearby, his hands trembling slightly as he scattered crumbs. She imagined the stories he carried, the quiet wisdom that only years of living could bring. Perhaps she too would carry her own stories one day, stories of simple courage, small victories, and quiet dignity in the face of a world that often misunderstood her. The thought warmed her heart and gave her a renewed sense of perspective. She pulled her cardigan tighter around her shoulders, feeling the gentle chill of the evening air. Her mind returned to the boutique, to the sharp contrast between her modest appearance and the glittering displays she had admired. She realized that her curiosity, her desire to see beauty even if it was beyond her reach, was not something to be ashamed of. It was a reflection of her human desire to experience life fully, to reach for moments of wonder even if they felt fleeting or out of place. With a slow, deliberate breath, she decided to shift her focus. Instead of dwelling on humiliation, she would remember the joy she had felt when she first saw the dress, the excitement that had made her heart beat a little faster. That feeling was hers, private and unspoiled by others' judgments. She could carry that joy with her like a small treasure, to remind herself that beauty and happiness were not limited to those with wealth or status. As evening approached, the sky painted itself in shades of orange and pink. The city lights began to flicker on, casting a soft glow across the streets. She watched the changing colors with a sense of quiet awe, appreciating the simple magic of the moment. Life, she realized, had countless small wonders that did not require permission or validation from anyone else. A sunset, the sound of laughter, the rustle of leaves in the wind, all these things were hers to enjoy without fear of judgment. Her thoughts then drifted to her own home, the place where she felt most herself. She imagined the familiar comfort of her small kitchen, the scent of herbs she kept on the windowsill, and the worn pages of books she loved to read. These were the parts of her life that gave her true happiness, far more than any boutique or luxury store ever could. She recognized that while the world outside could be harsh and unfair, her inner life remained rich, secure, and unshakable. She also reflected on her relationships, the people who truly knew and cared for her. They valued her kindness, her thoughtfulness, and the way she noticed things that others overlooked. They appreciated her for who she was, not for what she wore or how she looked. That realization gave her strength, reminding her that genuine connection mattered far more than social appearances. The boutique incident, while painful, was a fleeting moment in the context of her life, not a verdict on her worth. Her thoughts wandered to the idea of perception and judgment. She realized that people often reacted out of fear, habit, or misunderstanding. The sales assistant's reaction was not about her personally, but about assumptions made in a world obsessed with appearances. Understanding this did not erase the embarrassment, but it helped her detach from it. She could feel the tension in her shoulders begin to ease, a small weight lifting as she accepted that she could not control others' opinions, only her own response. She began to feel a subtle determination rising within her. She would not let this moment shape her self-image. Instead, she would remember it as a lesson in resilience, a reminder to hold on to her values, her joy, and her confidence. She thought about the many times she had faced challenges and emerged stronger, And she realized that this was no different, a minor setback that could be transformed into personal growth. As the evening deepened, she noticed a few streetlights flicker to life, casting long, soft shadows across the pavement. She stood, brushing off her skirt and taking one last look at the park. The air had cooled, but she felt a warmth inside, a quiet fire of determination and self-respect. She walked toward home with steady steps, each one a reaffirmation that she was more than the judgments of strangers, more than a fleeting embarrassment. She was a person of substance, dignity, and quiet strength. Along the way, she saw familiar faces in passing shops and cafes. Some nodded politely, others were absorbed in their own lives, but she no longer felt the sting of comparison or exclusion. The world continued to move, indifferent and sometimes unfair. Yet she moved with it, anchored by her own values and her understanding of what truly mattered. She thought about the many small joys waiting for her, preparing a simple meal, reading a cherished book, enjoying the comfort of her own space, and she felt gratitude for these things. She let herself smile fully now, a smile that was free from embarrassment or shame. The incident at the boutique would fade, as all moments do, but the clarity it brought would stay with her. She had learned once again that her happiness did not depend on wealth, appearances, or social approval. It depended on her own choices, her ability to appreciate life's small treasures, and her commitment to honor herself. By the time she reached her door, she felt lighter, stronger, and more centered. She paused, taking a deep breath before entering, aware that she carried with her a renewed sense of self. The day had started with humiliation and confusion, but it ended with reflection, understanding, and quiet empowerment. She stepped inside, closing the door gently behind her, and allowed herself to sink into the comforting routine of home. The world outside could wait. For now, she had reclaimed her peace, her dignity, and the simple joy of being herself. She walked slowly along the quiet streets, her thoughts still swirling around the incident at the boutique. The city seemed different now, softer somehow, as if the world itself had slowed down to match her own introspection. She noticed small details she had overlooked before: the pattern of light through a tree's leaves, the distant sound of a bicycle bell, the gentle chatter of people in a nearby cafe. For a moment, she allowed herself to be present, to feel the texture of life around her rather than the sting of earlier embarrassment. Her mind wandered to the hour she now had before she would need to go home. She considered stopping at a small coffee shop, just to sit and watch the world continue without her interference. She entered a cozy little cafe tucked away from the main street, the smell of fresh coffee and baked goods wrapping around her like a comforting hug. She ordered a cup of tea and a small pastry, then found a corner table by the window. She settled in, her hands wrapped around the warm cup, letting the steam curl around her face, soothing the tension in her shoulders. As she sat there, she watched people come and go, each absorbed in their own lives. A young couple laughed quietly over their drinks, an older man read a newspaper with careful attention, and a barista moved efficiently behind the counter. The ordinary rhythm of life felt grounding, a reminder that the world was bigger than her embarrassment, bigger than fleeting judgment. She sipped her tea slowly, letting the warmth spread through her body, and felt a quiet sense of peace begin to return. She took out her phone and scrolled through messages from friends, reading their small updates and funny comments. They reminded her that life had many layers and that small setbacks were just temporary ripples in the larger flow. A message from a close friend made her smile, a simple line about watching the sunset later and thinking of her. She felt a sudden warmth, the comfort of knowing someone cared, someone noticed her and valued her beyond appearances or social standing. That small connection reminded her of her place in the world, her own quiet strength and the love that surrounded her. The hour stretched forward slowly, and she felt herself shifting between reflection and distraction. She doodled lightly in a small notebook she carried, sketching patterns she found interesting and jotting down thoughts that came to her spontaneously. The act of putting pen to paper was soothing, a way to organize the jumble of feelings inside her. She wrote about beauty and simplicity, about resilience and self-respect, about the gentle but persistent power of being oneself in a world that often demanded masks. Outside the window, the light began to change, golden rays falling across the pavement, casting long shadows that seemed to move with the passing people. She watched as the city prepared for evening, the bustle of daytime softening into the calmer rhythm of approaching night. The transition reminded her of her own journey over the last hour, moving from tension and embarrassment to calm reflection, from self-doubt to renewed clarity. It felt like a small victory, a quiet assertion of control over her emotions and thoughts. Her mind wandered to the future, imagining what might happen next. She pictured herself walking home, entering her familiar space and allowing herself to simply be, but then a subtle thought lingered in the back of her mind, one that made her pulse quicken slightly. What if this moment, this pause in the world, held a surprise she could not yet see? She smiled faintly at the notion, feeling a mixture of anticipation and curiosity. Life had a way of surprising her when she least expected it. She returned to her tea, noticing how ordinary and yet comforting it was. The warmth, the gentle aroma, the quiet murmur of conversation around her, all of it felt like a small sanctuary. She reflected on how moments like these, simple and unassuming, were sometimes the most meaningful. They allowed her to step outside the rush of judgment, outside the pressures of appearances, and find a place where she could simply breathe and be herself. She realized that even though the boutique had rejected her, life continued to offer spaces of quiet comfort and understanding. As the minutes passed, she felt a subtle change in the energy around her. A faint sense of anticipation stirred, though she could not yet identify its source. She noticed a few people glance in her direction, some with curiosity, others with the casual acknowledgement of passing strangers. The world seemed to hold its breath just for a moment, and she felt that subtle tension ripple through her own awareness. She could not explain why, but she felt a sense that something was about to shift. She stood up, stretching her arms above her head, and glanced at the clock on the cafe wall. The hour was nearly over, and she prepared to leave. She gathered her notebook, her cup, and her small bag, feeling a sense of readiness. She stepped outside, the cool evening air brushing against her face, carrying the scent of the city in transition. Streetlights flickered on, casting soft pools of light across the sidewalks, and she felt the city's heartbeat sync with her own, steady and familiar. She walked slowly, her pace unhurried, noticing details she often overlooked. A window displayed seasonal flowers, their colors vibrant against the fading light. A street musician played a soft melody on his guitar, notes floating gently through the air. She paused for a moment, letting the music wash over her, feeling a subtle lift in her spirits. The ordinary world felt alive and full, filled with textures, sounds, and moments that reminded her of life's richness beyond material measures. Her thoughts wandered to the people she had encountered in the boutique, the assumptions they had made, and the judgments they had imposed. She felt a small flicker of empathy for them, realizing that fear and habit often drove people to act hastily, without understanding. She thought about the brief lesson the day had offered, an opportunity to reflect on resilience, perspective, and the quiet strength that comes from knowing oneself. She smiled softly at the insight, appreciating the subtle way life offered growth even in moments of discomfort. As she continued walking, she noticed a sleek black SUV parked a short distance away. Its polished surface reflected the dimming light, and she caught a glimpse of tinted windows that hid the occupants inside. For a moment, she did not pay it much attention, assuming it was just another vehicle passing through the area. She continued on her path, her mind still wrapped in reflection, unaware that this car would soon play a significant role in the next chapter of her day. She stopped at a street corner, looking both ways before crossing, and felt a mix of anticipation and calm. Her steps were measured, grounded in the quiet confidence she had cultivated over the last hour. Each movement felt intentional, a reminder that even in the midst of uncertainty she could choose how to navigate the world. She felt the lingering effects of the boutique incident, but they no longer weighed her down. Instead, they served as a point of reflection, a contrast that highlighted her own inner strength and the value of simple, authentic living. She thought about the home she would return to soon, the familiar routines that brought her comfort, and the people who truly mattered in her life. Their love and recognition were far more important than fleeting judgment or superficial appearances. That awareness settled in her chest like a quiet warmth, giving her a renewed sense of perspective. She felt prepared to face whatever came next, to step into the world fully present and with a calm, steady heart. The city around her continued to transition, the sounds and lights blending into a gentle evening rhythm. She noticed small acts of kindness, a person helping another with a heavy bag, a child smiling at a passerby, a stranger holding the door open. These moments, fleeting yet meaningful, reminded her that the world was not defined by cruelty or judgment alone. There were pockets of goodness, spaces where human connection and care persisted despite the noise and chaos of daily life. Her mind wandered to the idea of timing and patience. She realized that the universe had a way of orchestrating moments, even ones that seemed ordinary or mundane. Perhaps the hour she had spent reflecting, observing, and reconnecting with her inner self had been preparing her for something just beyond her awareness. That thought filled her with quiet anticipation, a sense that the next chapter of her day held significance she could not yet grasp. As she walked further, she became aware of a subtle presence nearby, a sense of someone watching without intruding. She glanced around briefly but saw only the ordinary flow of people and vehicles. The feeling was faint but persistent, a gentle nudge in her awareness that something was shifting. She let herself stay present with the sensation. Her curiosity piqued, her heart rate steadying in measured anticipation. The hour continued to pass, and she approached a familiar street corner, where she often paused before heading home. She took a deep breath, feeling the city's rhythm around her, the soft murmur of conversation, the distant hum of traffic, and the occasional clink of dishes from a nearby cafe. She felt herself grounded in the moment, fully aware of her surroundings, yet open to the possibilities that lay ahead. And then she noticed movement near the black SUV. The tinted windows rolled down slightly, revealing a figure stepping out with calm authority. She froze for a moment, her breath catching, her mind racing to process what she saw. The presence was unmistakable, commanding attention without needing to demand it. She felt a mixture of surprise, relief, and curiosity ripple through her, a sense that the day she had started with embarrassment and reflection was about to take an unexpected turn. She stood there, her thoughts still caught between wonder and reality, ready to face whatever came next with steady awareness and quiet courage. The black SUV's engine hummed softly as it came to a stop, the polished surface gleaming under the evening light. She watched it with wide eyes, her heart skipping a beat, unsure what to expect. The tinted windows reflected the surrounding city, hiding any hint of who might be inside. She had grown accustomed to solitude during her walks and reflections, and this sudden presence brought a flutter of curiosity mixed with a trace of anxiety. Then, with a calm, deliberate motion, the door opened. A tall figure stepped out, moving with a quiet authority that commanded attention without a word. He was impeccably dressed, not flashy, but with a presence that filled the space around him. She froze, unsure whether to speak, to move, or simply observe. Her mind raced through possibilities, none of which quite prepared her for the reality unfolding. He walked toward her with steady steps, the soft click of his shoes on the pavement marking each one. The city seemed to fade around them, the hum of distant traffic and the murmur of pedestrians dimming in significance. When he reached her, he stopped just short of her, his eyes meeting hers with a calm intensity that felt both familiar and extraordinary. There was no judgment in his gaze, no need for explanation, only recognition and understanding. She felt her throat tighten slightly, her emotions a swirl of surprise, relief, and something deeper she could not yet name. The embarrassment from the boutique, the reflection on her own worth, the quiet strength she had cultivated in the last hour. All of it converged in this singular moment. She realized with a sudden clarity that the world's judgments could not touch the truth of who she was, not when someone who truly mattered could see her entirely. He extended a hand, not in a formal gesture, but as a simple invitation. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, then allowed herself to take it. The warmth of his touch, the steadiness of his grip anchored her in a way that no words could. He gave a small, reassuring smile, and for the first time since the boutique incident, she felt completely at ease. The world had shifted in an instant, and it was a shift she welcomed with quiet gratitude. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice calm and measured, carrying a tone of concern without pity. She nodded, finding her voice after a moment of stunned silence. "Yes, I am," she replied softly. The words felt true, carrying the weight of her own reflection and self-discovery over the past hour. She realized that being seen and recognized by someone who mattered made all the difference, not in terms of status or power, but in the affirmation of her value and dignity. He glanced briefly toward the street, his eyes noting the world around them, and then returned his focus to her. "I'm sorry for the way things happened earlier," he said, his tone sincere but without unnecessary explanation. She shook her head slightly, feeling a mixture of surprise and appreciation. "It's not your fault," she said. "It was just unexpected." The words hung in the air, a recognition that some things could not be controlled, that life's moments often unfolded beyond planning or expectation. They stood together for a moment, the evening settling around them like a gentle blanket. She noticed how ordinary and extraordinary he seemed at the same time. Ordinary in his calm presence, extraordinary in the way he seemed to understand and ground her in the midst of confusion. She realized that their connection was deeper than appearances, rooted in mutual respect and quiet understanding. It was a reminder that true relationships were built not on material wealth or social standing, but on recognition, care, and shared presence. He gestured toward the SUV, a subtle indication that it was time to leave. She hesitated, taking a final glance at the street where the boutique had stood, the place where she had felt so small and judged only an hour ago. Now the memory felt distant, softened by the unexpected reassurance of his arrival. She understood that her life, her value, and her dignity were not determined by others' judgments, but by her own understanding and by those who truly saw her. As they walked toward the SUV together, she felt a sense of calm she had not expected. The city continued around them, lights flickering on, people moving about their routines, and yet she felt suspended in a small pocket of stillness. Each step toward the vehicle felt deliberate, a movement toward security, recognition, and the gentle affirmation of worth. She realized that the world could continue to judge, misunderstand, or overlook her, and it would not matter, because she had someone who truly saw her, who valued her entirely. The SUV's door opened smoothly, and he held it for her, a quiet gesture that required no explanation. She slid inside, feeling a sense of transition, as if leaving behind not just the street, but the weight of recent embarrassment, moving toward comfort and affirmation. He followed, and the door closed behind them, enclosing them in a private space away from the judgment and noise of the city. The hum of the engine was soft, a background to the unspoken understanding between them. Inside, the world felt insulated and calm. She looked at him, noticing the subtle details, the way he observed her without prying, the quiet strength in his posture, the gentle reassurance in his eyes. She realized that his presence had a grounding effect, a reminder that her life, her choices, and her dignity mattered far more than the fleeting judgments of strangers. She felt an unexpected gratitude, a recognition that the universe often had ways of restoring balance in moments she least expected. They rode in silence for a while, the city passing by in blurred lights and shapes. She allowed herself to breathe deeply, releasing tension she hadn't realized she was holding. Each exhale carried a small fragment of stress and doubt, replaced with calm and clarity. She felt a sense of security she rarely experienced, not because of material protection, but because of genuine presence, understanding, and care. He finally spoke, not to explain or justify, but to acknowledge. "I saw what happened," he said simply, "and I want you to know, none of it changes who you are." His words were not grandiose or dramatic, but they carried immense weight. She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, not of sadness but of release and recognition. The boutique's judgment, the fleeting embarrassment, all faded in the light of his affirmation. She realized that the moment's significance lay not in wealth, status, or appearances, but in being truly seen. She looked out the window, watching the city move past, and reflected on how quickly life could shift. An hour ago she had felt exposed and small. Now she felt acknowledged, grounded, and secure. The contrast was striking, a lesson in perspective and the fleeting nature of public opinion. She understood more clearly than ever that dignity and self-worth were not external. They were rooted in understanding oneself and being recognized by those who truly mattered. The SUV glided through the streets, quiet and unhurried. She felt the soft hum of the tires against the road, the gentle sway of motion, and the steady presence beside her. The combination of movement and stillness was comforting, a reminder that life could continue its flow even when individual moments felt chaotic or unexpected. She leaned back slightly, closing her eyes for a brief moment, letting the calm wash over her, appreciating the quiet intimacy of shared silence. He reached over, lightly touching her hand in a gesture of reassurance and connection. She squeezed it gently, a silent acknowledgement of trust and understanding. In that simple act, she felt the weight of the day lift further, the boutique incident dissolving into a distant memory, replaced by the present moment of calm, care, and connection. She realized that the essence of life was not in grand gestures or material wealth, but in these quiet affirmations of presence and recognition. She opened her eyes and looked at him again, noticing the subtleties, the faint smile that hinted at understanding, the relaxed posture that conveyed confidence without arrogance. She understood that true strength was quiet, unassuming, and gentle. The realization filled her with admiration and a renewed sense of security, a feeling that she could carry with her beyond this moment. The SUV slowed as it approached their destination, the familiar street signaling the transition from public spaces to private sanctuary. She felt a mixture of anticipation and comfort, knowing that whatever awaited inside was safe, welcoming, and familiar. The tension of earlier events had fully dissipated, replaced with gratitude and quiet reflection. She understood that life's surprises could be gentle and affirming, not only challenging or humiliating. As they exited the vehicle, he held the door for her again, a simple act that symbolized respect and care rather than hierarchy. She stepped out feeling grounded, valued, and fully seen. The world outside continued with its usual rhythm, but she felt insulated in her own understanding and recognition. The events of the day, from the boutique incident to this unexpected arrival, had created a narrative of growth, reflection, and affirmation that she carried with her into the evening. Together, they walked toward the building side by side, their steps synchronized in a quiet, unspoken harmony. She felt the weight of the day lift entirely, replaced with the gentle certainty that she was valued, seen, and appreciated. Every step reinforced her understanding that true connection and recognition were the most important measures of worth, far surpassing the fleeting judgments of strangers or the superficial allure of luxury. By the time they reached their destination, she felt a profound sense of peace. The SUV and the street behind them were no longer relevant. The significance lay in the quiet acknowledgement, the shared presence, and the affirmation that she had experienced. The events of the day, once chaotic and humiliating, had transformed into a lesson in resilience, perspective, and the enduring value of being truly seen. She stepped inside, ready to embrace the comfort, understanding, and quiet power of the life she shared with someone who valued her entirely. They walked inside together, leaving the city noises behind, stepping into the quiet comfort of a home that had always felt safe and familiar. The warmth of the space welcomed her like a gentle hug, a stark contrast to the cold judgment she had experienced just hours ago. She paused for a moment, taking in the familiar sights, the soft lighting, the gentle hum of life that filled the rooms, and allowed herself a slow, steady breath. Everything felt grounded, ordinary, and yet deeply reassuring. He followed her in, attentive but unobtrusive, his presence a steady anchor. She felt the lingering tension from earlier in the day begin to fade completely, replaced by calm and clarity. The boutique incident, once a source of humiliation and discomfort, now seemed distant and almost unreal, softened by reflection and the affirmation of someone who truly saw her. She realized how quickly perspective could shift, how a single encounter could alter the emotional weight of an entire day. She moved toward a window overlooking the small garden outside, the soft evening light casting long shadows across the floor. The familiar view, simple and beautiful, reminded her of the quiet joys she often overlooked. The rustle of leaves, the gentle sway of flowers in the breeze, the distant song of a bird returning to its nest. These were the parts of her life that truly mattered, the ones that no judgment from strangers could diminish. She felt a swell of gratitude for the stability, love, and understanding that surrounded her. He approached, standing slightly behind her, and gently rested a hand on her shoulder. She leaned into the touch, feeling the steady reassurance and care that had become a constant presence. His calm, quiet confidence reminded her of the inner strength she had cultivated, and she felt a renewed sense of herself. It was a reminder that life's value was measured not by appearances or public approval, but by connection, understanding, and self-respect. They moved to the sitting area together, settling into comfortable chairs near one another. Silence lingered, but it was not heavy or awkward. It was filled with shared understanding and quiet appreciation. She realized that in these moments words were not always necessary. Presence alone, the simple act of being together without judgment, was enough to provide comfort and affirmation. She closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself to soak in the calm and reassurance, feeling the last traces of the day's stress melt away. Her mind wandered to the boutique once more, but now with a different lens. She remembered the fear, embarrassment, and self-doubt she had felt, and then contrasted it with the support, recognition, and affirmation she now experienced. The juxtaposition highlighted the transient nature of public opinion and the enduring power of authentic connection. She realized that she had grown through the experience, gaining a deeper understanding of resilience, self-worth, and the subtle strength found in being seen and valued by those who truly mattered. He spoke then, his voice calm and measured, not to scold or explain, but to share a thought that resonated deeply. "You handled today with grace," he said. "Even when the world judged, you held yourself with dignity." The words were simple yet profound. She felt a tear prick the corner of her eye, not from sadness but from the quiet recognition that she had been seen and appreciated for who she truly was. The boutique incident no longer held power over her. It was merely a memory, a lesson in perspective and inner strength. She smiled softly, her eyes meeting his with warmth and gratitude. "Thank you," she said simply. "Not just for being here, but for reminding me of what really matters." His smile was gentle, affirming, and she felt a sense of peace wash over her. In that moment, she understood that life's challenges, embarrassment, and unexpected events were opportunities to reflect, grow, and recognize the enduring value of authenticity and connection. They spent the next few minutes in quiet conversation, talking about ordinary things, plans for the coming days, small observations about the city, the changing seasons, and the simple joys they shared. The conversation was light, yet deeply satisfying, reinforcing the connection that had carried them through the day's unexpected events. She realized that joy often resided in these small, seemingly mundane moments, in the presence and attention given freely without expectation or judgment. She reflected further on the concept of value, recognizing that society often measures worth through superficial means, appearance, wealth, or status, while the true measures were far subtler and more profound. Kindness, understanding, resilience, and the ability to maintain dignity in the face of judgment. Today had been a vivid lesson in that reality, a reminder that the world's opinions could be fleeting and irrelevant when compared to authentic recognition and self-respect. The evening deepened, and the soft glow of lamps created a gentle warmth across the room. She looked around, noticing familiar objects that carried memories and meaning, each one a small testament to her life, choices, and the people she valued. She realized that these tangible pieces of her life were a reflection of her inner world, and they held more significance than any momentary judgment or external expectation could impose. The boutique incident, once sharp and biting, now felt like a faint shadow against the rich texture of her everyday life. He reached over, lightly brushing a strand of hair from her face, a gesture that spoke volumes of care and attention. She leaned into it, feeling the steady assurance of presence that no words could fully capture. In these small, intimate acts, she found the essence of what truly mattered: connection, understanding, and mutual respect. The external world, with all its judgments, expectations, and superficial assessments, faded into the background, leaving only what was real and enduring. She thought about the lessons of the day, realizing that resilience was not about never experiencing embarrassment or judgment, but about how one responded to such moments. She had learned to reflect, to process, and to reclaim her sense of self even when faced with sudden discomfort. Now, with someone who recognized her fully, she felt a profound affirmation that her life, choices, and essence were valuable and worthy of respect. As they moved to the dining area, preparing a simple evening tea, she reflected on the importance of perspective. The boutique incident, while uncomfortable, had provided clarity about what truly mattered: inner strength, genuine connection, and the quiet affirmation of being seen. She realized that moments of discomfort could be transformed into insights, growth, and appreciation for the stability and love that surrounded her. They sat together, enjoying the warmth of tea and the calm of the evening. Conversation flowed naturally, touching on small details of daily life, shared memories, and gentle plans for the future. Each word, each exchange, reinforced the sense of belonging and recognition she had felt since his arrival. She marveled at how quickly her emotional state had shifted, from embarrassment and reflection to calm, gratitude and affirmation, guided by presence, understanding, and quiet support. She considered the people in her life who valued her for who she was, not for appearances or status. Friends, family, and now a partner who truly saw her all contributed to a profound sense of worth and belonging. She recognized that these relationships, grounded in authenticity, were far more important than fleeting judgment or societal expectation. The boutique incident, once powerful in its ability to embarrass, now seemed like a minor ripple in the broader, richer flow of her life. The night deepened further, and a gentle quiet settled over the home. She allowed herself to reflect fully on the day's events. Recognizing the journey from discomfort to affirmation, she understood that true happiness and security did not come from avoiding judgment or embarrassment, but from cultivating resilience, self-respect, and the meaningful connections that provided unwavering support and recognition. She looked at him, noting the calm, steady presence that had accompanied her through the transition from public humiliation to private affirmation. She felt gratitude not only for his arrival but for the quiet ways he reinforced the values she held dear: respect, dignity, and the affirmation of being fully seen. She understood that life's challenges, while sometimes uncomfortable, were opportunities to deepen awareness, strengthen resilience, and appreciate the enduring power of genuine connection. As they finished their tea and moved toward the living room, she felt a profound sense of peace. The boutique incident, once sharp and defining, had transformed into a memory that highlighted her growth, reflection, and the importance of authentic recognition. She realized that moments of discomfort could catalyze understanding and appreciation for what truly mattered: presence, care, and the quiet affirmation of self-worth. She leaned back in the chair, feeling the soft weight of the day lift completely. The room was warm, familiar, and filled with subtle light, and she felt a sense of completion settle over her. Life, with all its unpredictability and occasional discomfort, had offered lessons, reflection, and ultimately affirmation. She understood that her dignity, self-respect, and value were not determined by the fleeting judgments of others but by her own understanding and by those who truly saw her. He reached over again, a gentle, reassuring touch, and she allowed herself to smile fully without hesitation or doubt. The day had begun with discomfort and embarrassment, moved through reflection and anticipation, and concluded with understanding, recognition, and quiet affirmation. She felt whole, grounded, and fully present, appreciating the simplicity and depth of the life she led, the relationships she nurtured, and the enduring power of being truly seen. As night fell outside, she felt a quiet sense of completion. The boutique, the street, the black SUV, all had been parts of a journey that brought her to clarity and peace. She knew that future challenges would arise, as they always do, but she now had a deeper understanding of resilience, perspective, and the enduring value of genuine recognition. She felt gratitude for the lessons, the connections, and the quiet affirmations that had transformed the day from one of embarrassment to one of profound insight and peace.